to this evening's Fertility Week webinar. Firstly, I'd like to apologise to those of you who tried to tune into this webinar last Monday. I'm afraid we had a problem with our provider that didn't let the webinar happen that time. So thank you for persevering and joining us again tonight. Fertility New Zealand is really proud to host Fertility Week every year. Fertility New Zealand is a charity that's dedicated to holding the hands of Kiwis who wish to build whānau. I'm Nicola Batossi, CEO of Fertility New Zealand. We offer information, support and advocacy to Kiwis at all stages of their fertility journey. Without further ado, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce to you tonight Joi Ellis, who was actually one of the founders of Fertility New Zealand and a life member of the Australian and New Zealand Infertility Counsellors Association, ANZICA, and is really renowned in the field of fertility counselling in New Zealand. So thank you so much, Joi, for sharing your time and expertise with us tonight. We really appreciate it. If anybody has any questions or comments, please just type them into the box at the end of the presentation. Thank you, and over to you, Joi.
Kia ora, everyone, and welcome. I hope that you weren't hanging about last week, and as Nicola said, we're really, really sorry that the technology let us down, but hopefully we'll be all go tonight. So this webinar is called Self-Care During Infertility. I've been a counsellor, or I was a counsellor, I retired quite recently, for approximately 40 years in the field of infertility. And during all of that time, I realised that self-care is almost as important, if not as important, as the medical care that people can access if they want to during problems with fertility. So tonight I'm going to be talking about why it's important, what is basic self-care, because we all might wonder what you do for self-care, and ways to build up resilience, how to practice the self-care, taking control, and I want to talk a little bit about tolerance. So, wanting a baby when it's not happening is a very stressful experience. It's totally normal to feel distress, upset, even feeling grief-stricken. It's totally normal to not feel your usual self, to be weepy, to be cross when you're not normally a cross person and there doesn't seem to be anything to be cross about. Those are all normal feelings. It's understandable to have those feelings because fertility problems usually come as a shock. We grow up expecting that if we want to have a child, we probably would be able to. And we haven't got any past experiences to draw on and no universal experience. Not everyone is going to have fertility problems. And so you may very well be surrounded by people who have babies with ease or lots of babies. And so because it isn't a universal experience like maybe death is, you feel pretty lonely it's hard to find other people around you who are feeling the same way. Fertility treatment is often an additional stress into people's already stressful lives. People have jobs, people have maybe parents to look after, all sorts of other stresses. So adding in a problem like fertility, and if you want to access treatment, that can be an additional stress to an already laden system. Feeling stressed is uncomfortable. It makes us feel tired, exhausted, grumpy, lacking motivation, unable to concentrate, drifting off to other thoughts. It's a really difficult time. So it is important to try and do something about the stress. Attending to oneself and lowering the anxieties and the uncomfortable feelings may not bring about a pregnancy, but you sure feel better if you can do something to lower those anxious and negative feelings. And you'll be much better placed to welcome a pregnancy if you've done those things. Many of you will be pregnant. We can't say when, but it's a good idea to do something about it in preparation for that time. We can't control biology, and pregnancy is a matter between sperm and eggs. It is a biological matter, and we cannot be in control of it. So one of the stressful things about it is the random nature of biology. And we'll talk in a little while about taking control. So if you're going to do self-care, what would it be? What would you do? Well, one of the ways to build up some inner resources is to make sure that you're doing everything you can to be healthy. So top of the list is nutrition. Having a look at, are you eating sensibly, not necessarily boringly, but sensibly. And I just want to say one thing about food. There is no known food that will cause a pregnancy. If there was, every single fertility clinic in the world would be advising you to eat it, but there isn't. And I remember in Dunedin, when I was working at a clinic in Dunedin, there was a shortage of pineapple in the supermarkets and in the vegetable shops and things. And that was because someone had put on social media that pineapple was the food that you need to eat to get pregnant. And I'm afraid no amount of eating pineapple is going to do that. It is a question of a particular sperm, a particular egg at a particular time that will cause the pregnancy. Still, even though we're not going to label one food, it's a good idea to check that you are having a really balanced, sensible diet. One of the other things about self-care that really helps how you feel and how you cope with stress is to exercise. Now, for some people, if you're a marathon runner, then carrying on with a bit of running is probably a really good idea. If you're not already a marathon runner, then don't think that's what you have to do. It might be just going for a walk every day. It might be a bit more if you're used to doing that. If you love dancing, it might be dancing. If you like playing netball, it might be netball. But it doesn't have to be those things. Simple walking every day, reasonably reasonably paced walk is a really good idea. And many, many people have said, gosh, I certainly feel better if I do that. Basic self-care is also attending to sleep. So having a routine before you go to bed so that when you go to bed, your system will welcome sleep and you won't be tossing and turning. Those things all sound probably a bit boring. So what's also really important in terms of self-care is having fun. Now, fertility problems are not fun. Fertility treatment is not fun. But fertility treatment, fortunately, isn't 24/7. There are lots of times when you're actually not at the clinic and you're not having something to do. So there is actually plenty of time for fun. So it's important to think about what sorts of things did you enjoy doing before you knew you had a fertility problem, and maybe try and do some of those. Sometimes it's a good idea to take turns. If you're in a couple or if you're doing this on your own, you might ask a friend to take turns to plan some little fun thing during your week. And lastly, pampering. So fertility problems, fertility treatment is tough, as we've already said. You didn't ever want to be in this position. Nobody does. So it's okay to say, I'm having a hard time. I need to look after myself and do some pampering. Now, again, everyone's an individual and unique. So what works for some person as pampering might not be the same for someone else. Some people like massage, some people hate it. And of course, economics come into the picture as well. So you have to think, what is possible for me to do that would feel lovely and make me feel good that I can afford? You can maybe, if you like massage, but you can't afford to have one because fertility treatment is expensive and you're paying for it, that kind of thing, then maybe go to a massage school and see if they need models to practice on. There are all kinds of ways of thinking creatively as to how you can manage this. So try to live life as fully as possible in the present while you hope the future will bring you your dream. That's kind of the mantra about self-care. Oh, slides have gone. Oh, there we are. So, building up resilience. The more resilient you become, the more likely you are to be able to keep trying. Trying when a pregnancy doesn't eventuate or a baby isn't born is very wearying, and it's the more you can build up your resilience, the more likely you are to keep on trying. And we know that the more you do try, the more likely you are to achieve your dream. Of course, not everybody wants to do that, and it's perfectly reasonable if those of you who joined the webinar earlier last week may decide that you're not going to try anymore. That's fine. But if you do want to, then building up resilience is a good idea. And like these marathon runners, they didn't decide the night before, I'm going to do a marathon tomorrow. They've worked hard, built up baby steps, one by one, in order to be able to do the marathon. So building up resilience is a bit like that too. You have to take baby steps and practice. So self-care is also about taking control over what you can control. Feeling that fertility issues are taking over your life, that's a very common feeling. So it's important to try to get and gain a sense of control. So you need to recognize the difference between the things that you can control and the things you can't. We've talked before about the random nature of biology. So you can't control the outcomes, but you can control lots of things around treatment and waiting. One of the ways to get control is to be well informed. So it's very, very important to get accurate and correct information from reliable sources. You may know lots of friends, lots of well-meaning people who give you lots of information about they knew a friend who did so-and-so and that caused the pregnancy, and wouldn't it be a good idea if you didn't work so hard, or all kinds of manner of advice. Plant parsley, that's an old-fashioned one, but it was quite common when I first started working in this field. A lot of it is obviously rubbish. So unless your friends happen to be fertility experts, it's best to say thank you for caring, thank you for being interested, but just get your information from the experts and from really reliable sources like Fertility New Zealand. You can be in control of timing. It isn't a good idea to plan to have an IVF cycle in the week that you're moving house. So if you are planning to do fertility treatment, look at your diary and clear what you can out of it so that you're not having clashes. There's nothing more stressful than being at the clinic for an important part of the treatment, like the egg collection or whatever, and thinking, I'm meant to be at work, and you haven't told work and you haven't got the accurate time off. So clear the decks. If you've got visitors and they're coming to stay and you don't think that they'll be very sensitive, then say, no, it isn't a good idea for you to come just in that time when I'm doing this important thing. You need to give yourself permission to put yourself first for a little while. It is jolly lonely, so it's great to gather around you a bit of support. Choose where you get it from. Don't choose to, as I say, have people who aren't going to be sensitive to you around you. There's a lot of time wasting that can go on during fertility issues and treatment. There's a lot of waiting. You wait for appointments, you wait for your period, you wait for egg collections, you wait for results, and people can often look back over a long period, many, many, many months. If a pregnancy hasn't happened yet, then they look on that time and think that was all that time wasted. So again, think, what sorts of things can I continue to do? And then you look back at that time and you think, oh, it wasn't wasted time. You can be preparing for pregnancy by having fun, doing heaps of things that you always used to do, so that you don't feel that you've wasted time. And you can control some elements of treatment. Again, if it's IVF treatment, or any of the treatments actually, treatments that involve going, you can control by making sure that you've programmed it into your daily life, and that you talk to some people, if you want to, who are going to be sensitive, who will be helpful. Often they don't know what to do to help, and I'm sure that Andy, my ex-colleague, talked about that earlier last week, about ways that you can involve people if you want to, that can be helpful. Someone to make you a meal or someone to do your vacuuming is very helpful. And I think it's a really good idea to have an action plan for when the particular cycle of treatment is finishing. Plan A, it's worked. What are you going to do? Who are you going to tell? Who are you not going to tell? How are you going to manage how you find out the result? Those kinds of things. Plan B, it hasn't worked this time. What are you going to do? Are you going to take a break? Are you going to go away for the immediate weekend and, you know, deal with the result? What works for you and what doesn't? I'm just waiting for this slide to come up on my screen. There we are. So use the time of waiting for a family wisely. Have fun, go on outings, go somewhere new. It doesn't have to be an expensive trip away. It can just be going to a location near your home that you've never been to before. It might be simply exploring a new corner of a park where you've never walked before. Something new. Do something that you always do, but never before. If it's just a green list, be lateral and creative and see what might be possible, because you don't have to allow fertility treatment to overwhelm you and take control of you. You can take control of it. One of the things that I've constantly heard from people was that they were staying in their jobs because been there for a while and that they had to leave, and they could possibly just hang on to that job while they're doing the treatment until they're pregnant, and then they could leave because the job they hated, they had no satisfaction, was stressful, it was had no rewards, nothing at all about it that pleased them. I don't think you should put off making changes that you would normally make just because of fertility issues. So I think about, are the other things in my life causing me stress as well that I could do something about? And strangely enough, sometimes doing something kind and caring for somebody else often leaves us with a feeling that we're less stressed for ourselves. So I'll just leave that with you to think about what you might do. Sometimes that does help. And again, we've talked about this briefly, and I'm sure Andy talked about it a lot. Don't spend time with people that you know are insensitive to your feelings. There's nothing worse than going to meet with someone who is going to tell you about Mrs. So down the road's, got 6 children and that kind of thing. Choose your friends at this time. The slides are taking a very long time to move on. I hope you can see them. Hear me? Oh, it's not coming up, but I can talk anyway and hope it won't limit. I think because fertility in its nature is a private matter, you go. Sometimes it's really, really difficult to talk about it and to share your feelings. Some people are more private than others. Some people find it's not too difficult to talk about it. What is important is that you have some way of communicating. And so if you don't want to talk to someone else, then having a conversation with the very best listener of all, which is paper, is a good idea. So many people have found talking to the paper by writing has been hugely helpful. It isn't the kind of, I know some people keep journals and that's helpful to them too, but this is different kind of writing. This is just pouring out your innermost thoughts. You can swear, paper doesn't mind. You can be cross, the paper doesn't mind. Sorts of things that you might not do when you're talking to someone, but you can certainly do it on the paper. There's been quite a lot of research on the benefits of that kind of writing. And the research says that if you do it for a minimum of 4 consecutive days for about 20 minutes each day, you get much better benefit than if you just do a once off. If you can't think of anything different to say on each day, then you just repeat what you said before, and that's fine. It still has a beneficial effect. So, be proactive, take action, and sometimes very simple things are helpful. I've put clean the pantry. In my house, cleaning the pantry is something that needs to happen very often because it gets in a great state. But for you, it might be, tidy a bit of the garden, or sort the wardrobe, or clean the bench, or something. That kind of gives you a satisfaction that you are achieving something, and that you can be in control of something. And as I said before, attend to the other stresses in your life and learn to say no if someone is asking you to do something that is just an additional stress. You can say, I'd love to do that, but not at this time. Maybe next month or next year or whenever. And I can't stress enough how helpful it is to join a support group. Lots of people think, oh no, I couldn't bear to go along to a support group and talk to a whole lot of people who are going to be negative and complaining and weeping. That's only going to make me feel worse. But the reverse is usually true of support groups. You meet people who might help you to do something with them. They haven't got children, so they're going to be sensitive to your needs as well. It's a way of finding new friends who do understand. It's the way of sharing information when in a reliable setting, because each support group does have a facilitator. And it helps you to feel less isolated at a time when maybe your friends and your family aren't aware. So, schedule a regular time to review your feelings, because often we talk about it all the time or don't talk about it at all. So it's a good idea if you're with a partner and going through this, that you together spend some time talking about it, and then you can put it away and spend some time not talking about it. If you're doing it on your own, it's good to find someone who you trust and that you could share something with. And again, you probably talked about it last week. Sometimes, reasonably often, fertility issues are between men and women, and women are intuitively understand the benefits of being allowed to cry. Men find that quite difficult. It's not their way of releasing their stresses or their tensions. Women often say, if I have a good cry, then I feel a bit calmer and more peaceful, and it's a helpful thing to do. So if you're one of those people, then it's quite a good idea if your partner is a man to say, look, this is helpful to me. I know that you find it difficult. I know you can't fix it, but I just need to do it, and you need to let me do it. Men find it hard to see their partners in distress, particularly over something that they can't fix. It makes them feel impotent. Similarly, if you're in a lesbian relationship, it's hard to know how to support the other person. Simply acknowledging their pain and your own pain and talking about it is often just enough to make everybody feel a little better. It's important to feel that you've been listened to. So women mostly bear the physical load of fertility treatment. Not always, but mostly. And again, it's hard for men to feel included, or the female partner who isn't actually having the treatment. So working out ways of helpful things that they can do and ways that they can be included often helps the stress of it all. Finding a shoulder to cry on if you're on your own. Joining a support group that is specifically for women on their own, singles, mothers by choice. Getting someone to do helpful things with you, like exercise, go for a walk together, or if you have to change the way you've been eating, maybe they'll do it with you and make it fun. And there are many books that you can read too, specifically for people who are doing this on their own. There we go, another. Another slide that doesn't come up, I don't know where that is. What it's going to say is that there are some special times of the year that are particularly difficult. Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas. In the school holidays, the shopping malls will be all full of families and children. They are renowned times where the stress of wanting a child is worse. So it's a good idea to acknowledge to yourself, looking up to other stuff you had this week to make it Christmas. Nobody ever said you couldn't have a Christmas tree if you didn't have children. So think about what you want to do about Christmas. It's for families getting together. After all, Christmas is about birth of a baby, and that only emphasizes your feelings of loss if you've got one.
It seems that Joi is having a few problems with her internet connection. Hopefully she'll join us in just a minute. Sorry about the delay. The recordings from the webinars are available now on the Fertility Week site, and the recording from this webinar will be up tomorrow morning. Joi's coming back online now. Apologies for the interruption. If you have any questions or just comments, please feel free to type them into the box. Then I'll just approve them at the end of the presentation. Joi, I can see that you've rejoined us. If you could just turn your camera and mic back on. I'll move the slides forward for you. Apologies, everyone. There does seem to be some fairly heavy sort of technical issues at Joi's end. Joi, are you there? I'm not sure that we're going to be able to. Okay, I think we'll have to. Call it there. So, look, Joi, are you there? I can't hear you. Could you turn your microphone on? I think we're going to have to finish it up there. If anybody does have any questions or comments, because I'm really sorry that we weren't able to successfully complete tonight's webinar, could you please email them through? My address is nicola@fertilitynz.org.nz, or you can private message our Facebook page or call our helpline, and we'll ask Joi if she can respond to your questions. So again, I'm really sorry about tonight's technical issues, and thank you very much for joining us. Ka kite. Good night.